This video answers 4 questions about how integrated planning and performance management can increase profits by up to 5% of sales. These questions are answered from a finance perspective by describing what fully integrated processes look like and how value is created from the incremental capabilities that these processes support. In so doing, it also describes how these integrated processes enable effective enterprise and finance transformation in global manufacturers. Before getting started, it's important to acknowledge that there's a lot of hype surrounding integration-related planning and performance management methods, like those shown on the screen, particularly with integrated business planning in the manufacturing sector. This has led to confusion about the differences between them. Providing clarity about this issue is an important objective of this video. Here's the bottom line about these integration methods. None of them support the type of fully integrated processes that global manufacturers require. As complexity increases, critical capability gaps are exposed that undermine their effectiveness and value. These gaps pertain to an inability to cope with changing cost structures, especially those having a higher proportion of batch and sustaining costs, whose resource consumption patterns vary more so than do direct and fixed costs. These complexities increase risk because the line of sight between decisions, resources, and profits is blurred, especially as manufacturers shift towards specialty products and customer-specific services. For those that have done activity-based costing before, the impact of these variations will come as no surprise. They understand how such complexity leads to products and customers that are not as profitable as organizations think. While tools like activity-based costing have helped to achieve one-time cost reductions, they don't help to sustain them. In fact, the vast majority of companies don't sustain cost reductions for more than 3 years. What's being recognized is the need for processes that will help to do so. What's also being recognized is that these same processes are essential for achieving profitable growth, something the vast majority of companies don't do. These realities highlight the importance of understanding the capability gaps that undermine these traditional integration methods. This starts by appreciating the interconnected challenges that still face global manufacturers. Evidence of these gaps can be found in the results of strategic, financial, and operational research studies. The challenges shown on the screen dominate the results of such studies. They often persist despite significant technology investments. One reason is that they are highly interconnected in global manufacturers. Cash flow forecasting and scenario planning provide classic examples of this. What's not always appreciated is that the models required for supply chain planning are the same ones that are required for cash flow, foreign currency exposure, and working capital forecasting, and that these models require prescriptive analytics that are embedded into a single process that supports both financial and operational planning and forecasting. The absence of such models is one of the primary reasons why organizations have difficulty answering the types of questions shown on the screen, while also coping with change. In complex settings, answering any of these questions in isolation of others can lead to the wrong decisions, which is what often happens when organizations attempt to answer them using fragmented financial and operational planning models. The absence of such models is also one of the primary reasons why manufacturers have difficulty integrating and improving rolling forecasts and sales and operations planning. Its absence also hinders efforts to improve profitability and inventory turnover by both finance and operations. Another challenge that persists is functional silos, something that is different than just data silos. Functional silos remain one of the primary barriers to executing virtually every strategy that global manufacturers pursue, as evidenced by the results of 28 research studies, a summary of which is provided on the screen. The key takeaway here is that these challenges persist in most global manufacturers, and since they are highly interconnected, neither finance nor operations can effectively address them on their own. These challenges provide evidence of capability gaps between fully integrated planning and performance management processes and the ones global manufacturers have now. Despite often significant technology investments, most still have only partially integrated ones. These 2 points will be referred to as tactical and strategic IBP. Strategic IBP refers to the capabilities that are required to support the strategies that global manufacturers typically pursue, like profitable growth, and sustainable cost reduction. What differentiates strategic IBP is that strategic, financial, and operational processes are supported by one shared planning model, measurement framework, and workflow, thereby enabling manufacturers to plan, manage, and govern strategic, financial, and operational outcomes. One reason why current maturity levels aren't higher is that leading solutions don't support strategic IBP. Another is that global manufacturers aren't recognizing currently available technologies that do. This view may be different than those of technology analysts. One reason is that they often evaluate software solutions from functional perspectives, one for S&OP and another for finance. They are not always evaluating process maturity. What this means is that selecting leaders in each category doesn't mean that solutions can support strategic IBP. In fact, most have critical capability gaps that prevent them from doing so. What's becoming clear is that these complexity-driven capability gaps are not being addressed by strategic, financial, or operational solution providers. In other words, they are falling between the cracks. This fact is one of the primary reasons why individual applications, like activity-based costing and balanced scorecard, have seen little innovation in the past decade, and why global manufacturers struggle to achieve significant and sustained value from their use. These gaps are also one of the primary reasons why most finance transformation efforts fail to achieve key objectives like those shown on the screen. In other words, effective finance transformation goes hand in hand with strategic IBP. While there are many capability gaps that comprise the difference between strategic and tactical IBP maturity levels, 4 are the most critical for executives to understand from a business perspective. These are summarized on the screen, along with the required capabilities to address them. 2 others resulting from the first 4 are also shown. All 6 are described in more detail in a separate video. The absence of these capabilities leaves global manufacturers without effective internal market mechanisms for coping with complexity. In other words, they lack formal and effective capabilities for optimizing performance and achieving the other objectives shown on the screen. Without these mechanisms, manufacturers can experience unforeseen outcomes, ones that erode value and contribute to surprises in financial results, like those shown on the screen. Evidence of such value erosion can be found in the results of research studies, like those shown on the screen. One thing is common to the value erosion depicted by these research results, that being an inability to plan, manage, and govern outcomes, thereby leading to complexity-driven costs, an amount that can reach 5% of sales, a metric that also provides insight into the value of strategic IBP. One point worth highlighting is that cash flow forecasting is actually a leading indicator of integration maturity. When cash flow forecasts are inaccurate, it's often symptomatic of complexity-driven capability gaps lurking below the surface. In such situations, manufacturers are more likely to experience the challenges and value erosion that we just discussed. And foreign currency exposure forecasting can be viewed in the same way. Collectively, the capabilities that comprise strategic IBP enable step-change improvements to rolling forecast processes, one of which being that accurate cash flow forecasting is simply one of the key outputs of the process. Others are shown on the screen and explained in further detail in a separate video. The important point to note here is that these are significant and observable improvements to rolling forecast processes. The difference in value between strategic and tactical IBP can be significant. In the example shown on the screen, this difference is caused by the complexity gaps we discussed. While the value will vary from one manufacturer to another, those struggling with complexity-driven costs stand to benefit the most. Therefore, understanding this value potential is important. Not just for the value realized, but for the time to realize the value and cost to implement. Without understanding key capabilities at the outset, manufacturers can head down a path that is unnecessarily complex, resulting in higher implementation costs and longer time to value. The key takeaways from this video are provided on the screen. What's important to highlight is that strategic IBP is essential for both finance and enterprise transformation in global manufacturers. Capitalizing on it requires that financial and other executives make a deliberate choice between strategic and tactical IBP, and making this choice starts with a recognition that education is required to help them do so. Thank you for watching this video. For further details about its contents, please feel free to use the contact information shown on the screen.